Hi everyone, so today we're actually going to talk about buying a resale because we do have quite a few of clients that are actually looking for resale. So today we're actually going to go through what are some strategies to actually buy a resale property, and basically there are 3 steps. So we're going to go through most of these steps. So if you take the first example, I'm going to use Treasure at Tampines, right? As you can see from the data, if you look carefully, right, 04112 was actually 185k cheaper than 08155. So just looking at this slide, right, we just know that the buyer managed to purchase 04112 at 185k cheaper. Now, of course, this has already happened, but what we really want to understand in this slide, right, is why this happened. Because when we understand why something happened, we can actually use the same knowledge to spot the next opportunity. Am I right? So, how did this happen? If you look deeper, right, one owner actually bought it at 1.292 million, while the other bought at 1.411. So, the entry price that these owners entered in, the difference is already very huge. But again, why does this affect the price? So today, let me ask you, right, example, if an owner bought a property today at 1 million, and today you will try to negotiate with this owner from a 2.1 million to go down to a 2 million. Is there a high possibility? Well, most probably there is, because even at 2 million, he still makes a 1 million profit. Am I right to say? But imagine another owner in the same condo who bought at 1.9 million, you ask him to come down from 2.1 million to 2 million. Will there be a high possibility? Well, the answer is no, because the margin is much smaller. So today, one of the first things, right, that I look for when I look at a resale property is this: can I find owners that actually entered low? Because owners who entered low usually have more flexibility, and that's one of the key things when buying a resale. Okay, so this is another example, right? In just 2 months, another buyer bought 1 floor higher at 140,000 more. Again, the key question is not really about the data, but why did this happen? Because one owner, one level below, bought it at a much lower price. So when someone enters lower, right, naturally they have a bigger margin, and bigger margin means they have a greater flexibility. So if you look at this, right, of course you can see the purchase price for this just 1 floor lower, right, one got it at 2.877, the other got at 3.644. So the difference is very huge, which means even though when the one that bought it sold, right, he can actually sell it at a lower price. So today, I think many buyers actually focus on the asking prices. They probably go on Guru and then they see the asking price. They try to find something that match their budget, or something close to their budget, which is nothing wrong. But for me, right, I usually, for my clients, what I do, I actually spend a lot of time looking at the owner's purchase price, looking at the past transactions, because the seller's purchase price can affect the negotiations. Like what I mentioned earlier, this will really help in your negotiation, because I've served resale buyers that actually go to see many units. They actually offered many units, but none of them could get to the price they want, because you have to understand one thing. Today, no sellers want to sell low. Most sellers want to sell high. So this is the fact of the market. But how are we able to spot owners or sellers that are willing to let go at a low price? This is one of the steps. Okay, so the next segment, right, that I actually want to share about or talk about, right, is about how to look at a resale project selection, and of course maybe touch a bit on the unit type performance. So I'm going to take a very simple example. Usually when we look for properties, right, we already so-called have an area that we're looking at. So for example, in this case, right, let's say we want to buy something at Punggol, which is near the MRT, near Punggol MRT. So after looking at properties there, right, we shortlist to actually 2 maybe Watertown and Treasure Trove. Okay, so Watertown is nearer to, of course, is at Punggol MRT itself. Treasure Trove is just 1 street away. So the key difference between these 2 developments, right, is that Watertown is an integrated, okay, Treasure Trove is a normal condo, which is just 1 street away. So in terms of the area, right, they're actually side by side very similar, and they're not very far, but both are equally close to MRT. So looking at this, right, for example, some buyers might see Watertown as an integrated development. So integrated, maybe they'll be thinking, okay lah, it's okay to pay a bit more. Okay, but if you look at Treasure Trove, it's just one street away. So they might be thinking, since it's so nearby, I should go for Treasure Trove instead, and not pay the extra town depending on the prices. So this some ways that actually resale buyers think when they look at property. But today I'm actually going to go a little bit deeper. Okay, of course the overall price trend, I think both properties also make money lah. Right, so both properties also make money. So we look at this, and then maybe some of the buyers might look at all these trends, and then they might think, oh, so I just buy any unit, I make money lah, because overall we still make ma. So is it true that I buy any resale property, I will make money? That's what we want to look into lah. So now I'm going to go into unit type. So if we look at the Treasure Trove bigger units, right, the trend is, of course, the actually went up. Okay, so for example, if you look at the Treasure Trove 3-bedders, right, from 1001 PSF, they actually increased to 1003 PSF. Okay, so this is about a 200 PSF increase lah. Okay, of course this is just data. The key thing we want to understand is not just look at the numbers. We want to understand what is the trend, and we want to understand why this trend happened, so that we can actually use it in our next search or our property search. So in fact the prices, right, for the big units are from 1.2 went up to about 1.4. Okay, so now we compare it to Watertown, which is the one that is integrated to Punggol MRT, right? It's just at Punggol MRT itself. The bigger units actually remain quite stagnant. If you look at the transactions, it's actually quite stagnant, almost like a straight line. Okay, in fact, if you look at the 3-bedders, right, the increase is about 100 PSF. In fact, if you look at unit 1180, okay, these two, right, this person bought at 1.6, sell at 1.6. So they buy and sell at the same price in the same period as what I showed you in at Treasure Trove, where the units actually went up by 200,000. Again, must ask ourselves, why did this happen? So I think a lot of buyers, when we look at all this data, right, we start to wonder, why Watertown units don't move, why Treasure Trove actually move, and then we start to maybe try to find it. But I think one of the most key important reason, right, is actually what we call affordability. Now, if we study the affordability in that area, right, the average Punggol or Sengkang BTO price at that time was going at about 400,000. Okay, that's at that time 400,000. Okay, the average selling price actually after that, when they sell, they eventually sell at about okay, so based on the estimated proceeds, let's say because they make 300,000 profit, so that will be the cash. And imagine they in 100,000 CPF after 5 years or that kind of frame, right? Okay, so most of them will have about more or less 400,000 proceeds okay, to buy the if let's say they want to upgrade, or go for their next property. Now, if we look at Treasure Trove at that time, okay, of course they started at 1.2 million. 1.2 million, if you look at the down payment, the 25% down payment, and plus the stamp duty and everything, right, it's only at 332,000, right, 332,000, which is lower than okay, even those that buy at 1.4 million, which we saw the prices went up to 1.4 million, even those that bought it at 1.4, right, their down payment is still lesser than 400,000. So it's actually very comfortable for the HDB upgraders in the area to enter into Treasure Trove. In fact, they don't need to even top up much cash, and they actually port their proceeds over. Okay, and when something is comfortable for the surrounding buyers, right, especially the HDB upgraders, the prices can be supported. But if we look at Watertown at 1.6, the down payment plus stamp duty at 448,000. And of course 1.8 is already hitting 500,000 for the down payment and stamp duty. So looking at all this, right, if those people that wants to go into Watertown, they may have to top up extra cash. They may have, or the quantum is way higher, which means their down payment is higher, which make it not so comfortable. And the surrounding upgraders, right, cannot comfortably support all these prices, which is why Watertown didn't move as much compared to Treasure Trove. So the key thing, right, looking at this, right, one of the most important factor, right, before I enter any property, right, I always ask myself, who am I selling to in the future, and what do these buyers prefer? Because if you don't understand all these things, right, and we don't look through at all these factors, what happens is that sometimes we may even enter the wrong property, enter a property that don't have a good potential, and worse is we don't even know when to enter the right property. So this is a very important factor, especially when we look at a property, we must understand the exit. Now, that is for the bigger units. But now if we look at the treasure trove smaller units, we saw the big units actually make money, right? But the treasure trove small units, right, actually there's not much price increment. Yeah, not much price growth lah. If you see, it's all hovering about 900. So even in this time period, right, there's no why. Okay, so this one maybe is a bit of the market lah, because during COVID, right, I think most people staying at home, so a lot of them actually wanted bigger spaces, due to COVID, and then in fact that's why the larger units actually benefited lah. Okay, but this is probably just one reason. And but if we look at Watertown, the smaller units, right, actually the increase by about 100,000. So you see about let's say 1332, 1332, these two units, right? Okay, one is 780, and then after that it increased to 870. So that's an increment about close to 100,000. Okay, so in this case, Watertown smaller units actually move, but their bigger units remain stagnant. Okay, so again, look at all this data. Again, we must ask ourselves, why am I sharing with you this? Why am I trying to show you all this? It means that even in the same area, right, even within the same development, different unit types can move very differently. So it's not just about, I buy this project, I will make money, or I buy this area, I'll make money. We really have to even look to the details, even unit, floor level, facing, layout. These are all the different factors that we must look at. And in fact, in terms of this unit type, right, we need to understand the reason behind the price movement. So the question you ask, why did Watertown one bedder go up? What is the reason? So today I'm going to share with you what is the reason. Okay, so we look at this. We look at Watertown. Okay, that's at 570 square feet. Treasure Trove, 2 bedders, 75. Okay, but the price difference, one is 780, one is 900. But the very important factor we must look at, right, is that both of them command around the same rental. Okay, so now let me ask you, those buyers that buy smaller units, right, are they usually investors or own stay, or buying for own stay? Okay, most are actually investors, right? Because investors, they probably want to invest in a smaller units. They don't want to go into a big quantum, and some of them are even looking at rental yield. So today, if you are an investor, right, and you see Watertown and Treasure Trove, right, both rental are similar, but Watertown is cheaper. Which one will you choose? I think when you put it in this way, in this slide, right, is actually the answer is the thing is, most people will go for Watertown, because at a smaller quantum you get the same rental, which means your rental yield is actually much higher compared to you have to pay more but get the same rental. So people look at this slide, it's very obvious that they will go for Watertown. But why is it that some people don't know about this information? It's just that sometimes people don't actually put it out for the buyers to actually look at it. So that is one of the reasons but today when you actually look at analyze in terms of the investment, right, if you're looking for a smaller unit, maybe a 1 bedder or even a 2 bedder, we have to study the rental yield. Okay, and of course that's exactly why the Watertown eventually of course also make money, because they can see that the rental yield is good. So this is 2021, right? In 2022, if you actually look at the transactions, of course what we predicted, the Watertown 1 bedder actually shot up to about 900,000. Okay, in just 1 year it shot up. Okay, and of course, like what we mentioned, Treasure Trove, because the rental yield was not as fabulous, and not as good, the rental is around the same as the Watertown, it actually remained about also 900,000. Okay, at this point, let's say today you are a buyer, you now want to buy something in 2022. Looking at this, Watertown and Treasure Trove, okay, both are same price, but this one is smaller. Treasure Trove is bigger, both same price. Rental yield also roughly the same. I mean, the rental price is roughly the same. Okay, in fact, command slightly better at about 3,000, which is about maybe slightly better. Now I ask you, based on this, right, which one will you choose? I think most investors looking at the same price, almost same rental, but you can get a bigger unit, they will definitely go for Treasure Trove, which is exactly what we predicted. You know, that the water town will go up and then Treasure Trove will remain stagnant. And at this point, in fact, Treasure Trove actually went up. In fact, it went up quite high to about 300,000, close to 300,000. So the two-bedder actually outperformed in 2023, 2023, you know, and the two-bedders actually reached a high of about 1.98, which is close to 1.2 million. Some owners make close to 300,000. So, okay, but of course, if you compare to Watertown, like what we saw the comparison earlier, right, both are 900, right? Now at 900, Watertown doesn't seem as attractive really, because at 900, I can get something bigger at almost the same price, which is why Watertown remain rather stagnant, still at about 900 plus. Okay, of course, the highest the unit made was about 80,000, which is not very attractive, but relatively stagnant. So, you know, like what we explained earlier, right? At the end of the day, if you know how to actually read and manage the data, right, actually benefit for it, because it's very clear whenever I help a client, or let's say plan their portfolio, right, I already know who I'm selling to, and I really know the type of things, right, the buyers are looking for. So imagine today, right, if I know the buyers are all looking for investment in the same area, I know what is most important, right? For example, rental, entry price, all these things are very important in terms of investment. But example, if those units that we discuss are like those Watertown or Treasure Trove units, example, if the buyers are looking for own stay, is the rental important? Actually, the rental is not important at all for own stay people, because they won't care about rental, they want to stay. Then what becomes important? For own stay, actually, it becomes much more complicated. Why? Because different location will look for different things, and ultimately, it still comes down to the layout. So, for example, like let's say East Coast, people that want to buy East Coast, people that want to buy Jurong, Yishun, Tiong Bahru, they all look for totally different layout for their own stay. And they all have different preferences because the buyers of different locations behave differently, right? Which is why all of these, right, have to be analyzed on a case-by-case basis. End of the day, right, I really feel there's no such thing as the best condo, right? It's only the best condo for your situation, because a unit that is fantastic for an investor, you know, good for an investor, maybe not so good for an own stay buyer. And the layout that the East Coast buyers love, right, may not be what the Jurong buyers are looking for. Which is why all these things that we share, right, cannot be generalized. You can't just look at this video and you straight away know or what to buy, or, you know, straight away be able to choose the right property. We have to study one by one, you know, based on your needs, based on, example, your budget, your timeline, based on your preferences, what area you're looking at, what is your goal, are you planning to hold short term, are you planning to hold long term, and who are your future buyers. So today, right, if you're actually currently searching for a property and you don't just want to rely on luck, you don't just want to see something you like and just buy without even analyzing or understanding, you know, what is the potential, what is the numbers behind it, right? We'll be happy to share with you how we actually analyze properties. In this case, will be resale properties. Our clients actually commit, right? We will actually do an analysis. And in fact, if you have a few projects in mind and that you are considering, but you're still unsure which one to go for, you know, we can actually see whether you're comparing the right things, and we can actually help you in your resale purchase. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. I'm Dylan, and I'll see you soon.